me see how it is looking like. So this is how we left yesterday. A table view was created. So the add controller or this particular segue is all automated, because as soon as I click the plus button, it immediately goes to the second view controller, and as I enter it, when I click the save button, it is also automated. Unwinding is also automated, because whenever the save button clicks, immediately it comes back to this view controller. From there it accesses the data whatever it's been entered. This is how the code logic we had written. So as per storyboard, our current design, immediately navigation controller loads this particular table view controller, because the navigation controller having what you call initial view controller. But I'm just going to do a little rearrangement. Hopefully it doesn't mess up my code. I just remove the navigation view controller, because I'm going to add one more view controller just before. I mean, that is the login view controller. Once the user login, maybe we'll have a hard-coded login credential, admin. Only when the user enter admin, it should allow it to go login. If the user enters some other credential, it should not proceed forward. So in that case, we will end up creating a manual segue. I'll reproduce the scenario before seeing why the manual segue would be needed. Okay, let me bring the view controller here. So this view controller is going to be embedded into a navigation view controller. So I have to make sure this is set to my initial view controller, and then it launch to this view controller. So login thing, and let us bring, see, remember this has all become a dead end view controllers, because this does not have any connection at this point as I removed it, but we have to make a relationship. So let me bring those. Divide text field. Okay, so and you can also control the keyboard type. Of course, iOS based on the software keyboard. There is, iPhone does not have a physical keyboard. So as the fields being changed, for example, you are asking the user to enter the phone number. So you have to bring the dial pad only with the numbers, not necessary to have a characters. So you can define what kind of a keyboard you would require. Of course, those are all the things as we create a complex application, we'll come to it. But still, these are all the important points we have to work on. So I'm just looking for one secure text entry that will make sure a password field, like the star stuff. So it will just add it. So this particular field I want to make it as a secure, mean the user does not see, this is just a password field. let me put a placeholder to password, and finally the button. So we have a button, these two fields. Let the user enter. At this point, we will keep it admin as a hard-coded value, so that only when the user enters these two values, we are going to let the user to go to the second view controller, or this particular view controller where the user can see the table view. Had I add automated segue, for example, as soon as the login clicked, 1 second, this one sometime won't select. This is an automated segue. I mean, I have done the segue relationship in the storyboard itself and telling the source and destination. I mean, whenever the user click on login button, go to this view controller. This is what we are trying to say. It's recommended to keep an identifier. Segue. But the problem with this automated segue, it won't wait until the user enters the right username password. It will immediately move to the second view controller. Let us see what. Before that, let me put the auto layout stuff completed. Suggested constraint. So looks fine. Now I have a first view controller which is asking the username password. So I enter some other credential. It doesn't wait. It has to either validate something. So we have to make sure certain level of code added. So programmatically I check whether the username password entered something matches my requirement. Then only let the user move to the second segue. Before that I have to add the corresponding view controller class. So far no classes. So need to add new file. This is going to give a name login view controller. Now we have to tell this particular class belongs to. In fact, I should have done it before itself. Now the corresponding class is ready, and we have to define these required fields, views to be initialized. The property has to be initialized. So let me see this one, login view controller. Make sure you click this one first and then go to storyboard, then you click this one. Naturally you will be given a choice still, and I'm going to be in the login view controller. Let me initialize the text field and the button. So view this one, I hope, field. So username field. And I need a button action to be triggered. Login button pressed. This is an event listener for button. I've already given you an idea like how I can listen the button click events. So these methods have been implemented. I'll connect it a little later. Let me go back and synthesize all the values initialized. See this yellow? Try to say what exactly you are missing. In this case, it is asking, see, modern Xcode auto synthesize, but I still prefer you synthesize it. But apart from that, there is a function defined in the header, but the implementation is missing. That is what it is saying. Login button press not found. But let me synthesize first. Username field, password field, these two things, and you have to implement. What is the name? Login button pressed. Now it's been implemented. Prepare for Segue. That's already been implemented, but we are not going to need it at this point. Okay, now if username text field see the convention I am following. You know that it may take a little while to understand the convention behind it, like the object and inner properties. We usually get used to put a dot and call them. In this case, it's a space. Only difference is the Java kind of languages, the object and inner property can be called using a dot notation. In this case, it is a space. That's it. I think I haven't maximize the text. And password field and its text is equal to a string. I'm expecting both having admin entered. I'm going to let the user to proceed further. Otherwise, I don't really want to enter. Allow the user to go. For that to happen, first thing we have to remove the automated segue, which does not wait, because this one immediately as this particular button clicked, it immediately goes to the second view or the table view controller, whatever we have defined. I'm just going to remove it. That segue I have removed it. Be careful, like sometime it will tend to remove the entire view controller itself. Hold to press the command Z to bring them back. Now I have to create a manual segue. I mean, I don't know who is going to call that segue. Who is the source, who is the destination, I won't be knowing one point of time. But still I want to have a segue. In that case, the owner, this particular class, is going to have a segue control command and launch. See, remember the title is coming as a manual segue. The segue drawn and give a identifier login validation segue, some name, whatever name, what you prefer. At this point, a manual segue has been drawn, but who is going to call this? We have no idea. We are going to call it when our condition met. So let me run it. Is there any changes it did in the coding? First we have to understand. First thing, the segue doesn't move because I removed the segue. I mean that the transition doesn't happen. And a couple of work I have. First thing, the touchdown, right click on the button and search, is there any method available? Yes, I have a login button press method. So whenever the button is pressed, it is going to execute a method which is called login button pressed. So let me put a NSLog first, whether it is coming inside or not. Okay. If the condition doesn't match, In fact, it will be appropriate to put a dialog controller over here. We have a alert controller, alert view controller. In fact, we call it in Objective-C and Swift. We can put an alert view controller to alert, like, okay, sorry, what you entered is wrong. I mean, this is what the convention we did in the jQuery mobile. We will do it, but that would require some sort of callback explanation. I'll safely take it for tomorrow. At least I would like to verify whether this particular block is called or not. So I am going to enter some wrong credential. If you see that login failed, so it is validating. So it is going to accept only when I enter the login passed. So now I enter admin. See the secured text input. So naturally this becomes a password field. So whenever the user enter the right credential, I am getting NSLog being triggered. Being this event listener, I mean the button event listener is working, and this is where I am going to call the ManualSegue. So in this example, I have already drafted a ManualSegue having no idea about source and destination. I'm sorry, of course destination I know, but I don't know who's going to call it. So that segue name is login validation segue. So make sure you have it in your clipboard. Now let us call it manually. It is already available, self mean available as an object method. Perform selector. Okay, this is the one I want. Perform segue with identifier. It means call the segue having a name, and who is going to center? Self. I mean, the sender of the segue is the same class. So I'm going to call this particular segue manually. Remember, perform segue with identifier. You are giving the identifier name, valid identifier name, whatever you have given in the storyboard for the segue. And when you call it, this will move to, or that it will make a call to this segue, and this segue is going to take the view controller to the destination, whatever, wherever it is being mapped. So it is manually being called because only when the condition met, it would be called. Otherwise, it won't go. Oh, let us see now. So I am going to enter the right credential, admin. Now I see it is going to the second view control. Instead, if I enter something wrong, it won't move. So it's a kind of a manual segue. Only when certain condition met, I am calling the destination. Otherwise, I'm not proceeding. So we have just somehow made it a kind of a login protected site or login protected app. Only when certain condition met, it will take the user to the rest of the screen. Otherwise, it won't take the user. So this is part of ManualSegue, and we have a manual unwinding segue as well. It means unwinding means the reverse one. So we have already done with the callback method and trigger whether how it could be a segue can be called, but this can also be manually triggered. For example, let me put some button over here for testing purpose, so how the ManualSegue works, and then we will see how. In fact, a lot of people prefer ManualSegue. Automated segue does not give much control over to them, but for your application you would decide which one is better. I would suggest you to use both the combination as much as possible. Okay, let me create a manual unwinding segue. That's slightly tricky though. A manual unwinding segue, it's slightly, for example, I want to dismiss and go back manually. But usually when the save button is clicked, I have already mapped an unwinding segue with a callback method. But I don't want to do in this way. Instead, I want to do it manually. If you want, what you can do, this is the owner of the file, and control, and see, just drop it to a exit, create a segue. One second, it's already been defined. Okay, I don't think it's already there, because of that it is identifying. I would have to remove the method, but removing the method will mess up the code still. Maybe I'll take one more session. Actually, it's the same concept, because there is a callback method exit. That's why it is giving me a choice. A manual segue, unwind segue, just start from the owner to the exit and call as manual segue and give an identifier and call the same perform segue with the identifier. It will just reverse and come back. So wherever you want, you can simply go back and do a reverse segue. But the reason why it is giving me this one, for obvious reason, I have already defined a method. So that's the reason it doesn't let me to go back. Okay, I still try to do it. I'm going to call this. See, assuming the segue has been drawn, but I couldn't see it. If we see that the particular add record, if you see that there is two segue exist. One is the automated segue what we have done, and another one which just we manually added. So I need to know which one it is, which one exactly it is. Okay, one, I hope both the cases have been given a name. Okay, one of identifier I'll give a name. Reverse segue. I really no idea which one it is, so I'll try to see if I can call and go back. This one I'm going to remove. So now it is pointing to a generic one. So naturally I remove the automated unwind segue which we had before. Instead we have a manual unwind segue. If you see that when I highlight the entire view controller being selected, it means it doesn't know who is going to be get clicked. So I'm going to call it manually. So the name is reverse segue. Hopefully I made a provision for the login, added it view controller. There is already a method, or there's no method, seems to be. Okay, add edit button, it's already there. UI button, it's a property. There is no action. So this particular function to receive the callback whenever that particular button gets clicked. Let us implement that. Once you implement, tell the event listener that this particular function, for example touchdown, try to see any functions defined. Yes, add edit button pressed. Now whenever add edit button pressed, let me run the code at least. So let's enter admin. Now it won't dismiss because I removed the automated unwinded segue. Now I need to handle it manually. So let us go back wherever the save button or add edit button is pressed. Now call perform segue with identifier, give the same name, reverse segue. Now it should dismiss itself because I am manually telling to go back. Sorry, username password. Now that get dismissed. So here also you can put if else condition if at all you want to see whether the empty fields have been entered, the user may not have the valid details entered. So in that case you should not allow to get dismissed, instead put an alert empty fields are not allowed, or add some sort of validation. Once everything goes successfully, then let the user to go back and add it to the second or go to the previous view controller, there the table view can be populated. So this is a manual unwinding segue. So in various ways, of course, in two ways, both the forward and unwind segues are possible. One is automated way, using the storyboard itself tell the source and destination which event is going to trigger what. So in that case it would be pretty helpful to have an instant navigation happening as soon as that particular view either gets clicked or any action performed on that. If at all you programmatically need to do some sort of validations, then only let the user to move to the second view controller. Manual segue is the ideal choice, and this is what we have done. A manual segue, only the file owners or the class, this we usually call file owners or something like that. So the class owners will have a source and destination. Anybody who knows about the segue identifier can call the perform segue with the identifier method and then go to the respective source or destination. Unwinding also similar, but unwinding should be done in this way. Should start from here to here, immediately the exit, because there will be a segue which will trigger the exit of the current view controller. So that you have to do it. It will be sometime difficult. Better you click it from here how many segues been drawn and what is the action you've been performing. So here also you can do a lot of changes. Still, manual segues are quite helpful, and most of the time, because we have to validate the code and based on some conditional logic, we have to let the user to move to the other view controller. So this is a manual segue. So this is what I would like to explain today. Next part, of course, I have more in-depth coverage of views and core data and other things following. Of course, I'll try to move it till Saturday. Tomorrow also I'll try to make your schedule somehow flexible so that you complete your assessment. What time the assessment is going to be in that case?